Close your eyes and imagine a bedroom in ancient Macedon, somewhere around 350 BC. Not the sanitized, romanticized version you've seen in movies. Picture stone walls, thick and cold. Torchlight that casts more shadows than it illuminates. The smell of olive oil burning mixed with something else. Incense, maybe, or the musk of animals. Now picture the bed. Rich fabrics, fine wool dyed in expensive colors. And coiled in those fabrics, moving slowly, languidly, snakes. Live serpents. Not one. Multiple. Their scales catching the torchlight as they slide across silk and skin. And in the center of this nest of serpents, completely calm, utterly unafraid, a woman. Beautiful, they say. Dark-haired. Eyes that seem to see beyond the physical world into something deeper, something that terrifies men who consider themselves brave. Her name is Olympias. She is a princess of Epirus. She is a queen of Macedon. She is a priestess of Dionysus, the god of wine, ecstasy, madness, and divine possession. And she sleeps with snakes. The cult of the serpent. This isn't metaphor. This isn't symbol. The ancient sources, Plutarch, Athenaeus, later historians drawing on older accounts, all confirm it. Olympias kept live snakes in her bedroom. She handled them during religious rituals. She slept with them coiled around her body. But to understand this, you need to understand the religious landscape of ancient Greece. This isn't the pristine, rational, philosophical Greece of Socrates and Plato. This is older, wilder. This is the Greece of ecstatic mystery cults, of women gathering in mountains to perform rituals that horrified and fascinated male observers. The cult of Dionysus, called Bacchus by the Romans, was one of the most powerful and controversial religious movements in the ancient world. Unlike the official state religion with its public sacrifices and political priests, the Dionysian mysteries were private, ecstatic, transgressive. Women, particularly, were drawn to these cults. And in the cult, they found something unavailable in normal Greek society: temporary liberation from male control. During the rituals, women could leave their homes, their husbands, their children. They could dance, drink wine, enter trance states, speak prophecy, handle dangerous animals. The snake was sacred to Dionysus. In the mysteries, women would dance with live serpents, drape them around their necks, let them coil around their arms. This wasn't safe. Ancient Greek and Macedonian snakes included venomous species. One wrong move, one frightened snake, and you could die. But that danger was the point. You were proving your devotion, proving that the god protected you, proving that you'd transcended normal human fear. Olympias took this further than most. She didn't just handle snakes during rituals. She kept them, domesticated them, if such a thing is possible with reptiles, made them part of her daily life. And she slept with them. The king who was afraid. Plutarch preserves a telling detail. King Philip II of Macedon, Olympias' husband, was terrified of her bedroom. Think about what this means. Philip was one of the most successful military commanders of his age. He'd unified Macedon, conquered most of Greece, survived dozens of battles. He had scars across his body, including the loss of an eye in battle. This was not a man who frightened easily, but he was frightened of his wife's bedroom. Plutarch suggests Philip would sometimes stand at the door, torch in hand, looking in at Olympias sleeping with the serpents coiled around her. And he would back away, not with disgust, with fear, because what Olympias was doing wasn't just strange. It was a claim to power that Philip couldn't match. He controlled armies. She controlled the divine. He conquered through force. She conquered through mystery, through access to forces he couldn't understand or manipulate. And in a world where religion and politics were inseparable, where prophets could make or break kings, Where divine favor was considered essential for success, Olympias's snakes were a weapon more powerful than Philip's cavalry. The psychological warfare. Let's be clear about what's happening here. Olympias isn't just a religious fanatic losing herself in ecstatic worship. She's performing. Carefully. Deliberately. She knows the snakes terrify people. She knows that men, particularly military men like Philip and his generals, are deeply uncomfortable with religious practices they can't control or understand. She knows that her association with Dionysian mysteries makes her seem dangerous, unpredictable, possibly mad. And she cultivates this image. Deliberately. Because in a world where women have almost no official power, can't vote, can't hold office, can't command armies, exist legally as property of fathers or husbands, the ability to inspire fear is power. The ability to claim divine connection is power. Olympias is using religion as a political tool. And it's working. The palace staff whispers about her. Servants cross themselves, or whatever the ancient equivalent was, when they pass her chambers. Rival wives in Philip's court avoid her, frightened of what curses she might call down. Even Philip, the king, the conqueror, gives her space he doesn't give to his other wives. She's created an aura of untouchability through her snakes and her rituals. She's made herself sacred, dangerous. And this is just the beginning. Because what Olympias understands, what will become clear over the course of her life, is that the greatest power isn't controlling men directly. It's controlling what men believe, controlling the narratives, controlling the myths. And she's about to create the greatest myth in Western history, the myth of Alexander the God. But first, she needs to become queen. And that requires a different kind of manipulation. The marriage. The year is 357 BCE. Olympias is young, 18, maybe younger. She's a princess of the Meletian royal house in Epirus, a kingdom to the west of Macedon. Epirus is smaller, less powerful militarily, but known for something else, prophecy. The Oracle of Dodona, one of Greece's most ancient and respected oracles, is in Epirus. The region has a reputation for mysticism, for magic, for dangerous women who know secret things. Philip II of Macedon is in his early 20s, recently crowned king of a kingdom that's been weak and divided for generations. But Philip has plans. Big plans. He's going to unify Macedon, conquer Greece, maybe even challenge Persia. He needs alliances. He needs legitimacy. He needs wives who bring strategic value. They meet at Samothrace, an island in the northern Aegean, during mystery rites. This is important. They don't meet through normal diplomatic channels. They meet during religious initiation, during sacred ceremonies where normal social rules are suspended. Plutarch suggests they were both being initiated into the Samothracian mysteries at the same time. These were secret rites, and we don't know exactly what they involved, but they were known for being intense, transformative, possibly frightening. Whatever happened during those ceremonies, Philip decided Olympias was worth marrying. Maybe he was genuinely attracted. She was beautiful by all accounts. Maybe he was impressed by her religious authority and saw strategic value in alliance with Epirus. Maybe both. For Olympias, Philip represented opportunity. Macedon was rising. If she could become Philip's queen, if she could bear him sons, she could have real power, not just the limited influence of a princess in small Epirus, but the potential to shape empires. They married. Political alliance wrapped in religious mystery. A warrior king and a priestess queen. Rationalism meets ecstasy. This should have been a disaster. Instead, it produced Alexander the Great. But the production of greatness required something darker than love or even ambition. It required programming. Careful, deliberate, systematic psychological manipulation. And it started the night Olympias discovered she was pregnant. The prophetic dream. Plutarch records a story that Olympias herself spread later. The night she conceived Alexander, she dreamed of a thunderbolt striking her womb. From the strike, fire spread across the entire world. Philip had a dream too, according to the story. He dreamed of sealing Olympias's womb with a seal bearing the image of a lion. These dreams became foundational myths. Olympias interpreted her dream to mean that her child was fathered not by Philip, but by Zeus, the king of gods, who appeared to mortal women as lightning or as animals. Philip's dream supposedly confirmed the child's leonine courage. Did these dreams actually happen? Probably not. More likely, Olympias invented or embellished them later, creating a divine origin story for Alexander. But here's the crucial thing. She believed them, or convinced herself to believe them, or decided that belief didn't matter as much as the story. Because from the moment Alexander was born, July 356 BC, Olympias began the process of creating a god. Let's understand what Olympias married into. Because Philip II of Macedon was not a normal man, and Macedon was not a normal kingdom. And the collision between Olympias's mysticism and Philip's pragmatism was going to reshape the ancient world. The one-eyed king. Philip II came to power in 359 BCE, at age 23, when his brother, the previous king, was killed in battle. Macedon was in crisis, defeated militarily, economically weak, threatened by neighbors, riven by internal factions. Within 20 years, Philip transformed Macedon into the dominant power in Greece. Military genius combined with ruthless political pragmatism. Philip revolutionized warfare. He developed the Macedonian phalanx, a formation of infantry with long spears that was nearly unstoppable. He trained a professional army. He conquered methodically, absorbing territories, making strategic alliances, eliminating threats. He also survived. Ancient warfare was brutal and personal. Kings fought in battle, led from the front. Philip accumulated scars like medals. He lost his right eye in 354 BCE, hit by an arrow during a siege. He had a club foot from an old wound. His body was a map of violence survived. But Philip's greatest weapon wasn't military. It was political. He understood that conquest is temporary unless you can create legitimacy. And in ancient Greece, legitimacy came through marriage alliances. Philip practiced polygamy. Not unusual for Macedonian kings, but Philip took it to an extreme. He married at least 7 times, possibly more. Each wife brought an alliance with a different region or political faction. Each marriage was a strategic move on the chessboard of Greek politics. Olympias was wife number 4, maybe 5. Important because of her Epirot connections, but not unique. Philip had other wives before her. He would have others after. This is crucial to understanding Olympias's position. She was never the only queen. She was one among many. And in polygamous royal courts, that meant constant competition. The harem politics. Imagine being Olympias in Philip's court. You're 18, maybe younger. You've just married a man twice your age who already has multiple wives and children by those wives. Your entire value is determined by your ability to bear sons who might inherit the throne. But here's the catch. Philip's other wives are also bearing sons. Any of those sons could become king. Your child has no guaranteed claim. Everything depends on who Philip favors, who dies in battle, who survives the brutal succession politics of Macedonian royalty. Philip's court was not a peaceful place. It was a snake pit, appropriate metaphor, given Olympias's religious practices. The wives competed for Philip's attention, for resources, for their sons' positions. Alliances formed and dissolved. Poisonings happened. Accidents occurred. Children died under suspicious circumstances. This was normal. This was how royal courts functioned. Succession was Darwinian. The strongest, most cunning, most ruthless survived and inherited. Olympias entered this world as a teenager. Foreign, Epirote, not Macedonian. Known for strange religious practices. Beautiful but odd. The other wives probably underestimated her initially. That was their mistake. Because Olympias had something they didn't: absolute conviction. She didn't just want her son to inherit. She believed, or decided to believe, that her son was destined to inherit. Not through political maneuvering alone, but through divine right. She was going to make Philip's other sons irrelevant not by killing them, though she would eventually, but by making her son so obviously, undeniably superior that no other claim would matter. She was going to create a god-king. And she was going to start before the child could even speak. The birth of Alexander. July 356 BCE. Olympias gives birth to a son. They name him Alexander, defender of men. A good Greek name. Traditional. Unremarkable. But the circumstances of the birth become legendary, because Olympias makes them legendary. According to later accounts, spread by Olympias herself, most likely, Alexander was born on the same day that Philip won a major military victory. Also on the same day that Philip's horse won at the Olympic Games. Also on the same day that the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, burned down. 3 major events, all on Alexander's birthday. Coincidence? Olympias would have you believe it was prophecy. Signs from the gods that this child was special. Destined. The Magi, Persian priests, supposedly declared that the burning of Artemis's temple meant Asia would be destroyed by a child born that day. More prophecy. More destiny. How much of this is real? Probably very little. The events likely didn't all happen on the same day. The prophecies were probably invented or embellished later, after Alexander conquered Persia, making them seem like fulfilled predictions rather than retroactive myth-making. But that doesn't matter, because Olympias believed them, or chose to believe them, or decided that her son would believe them. And that belief, that conviction that Alexander was marked by the gods from birth, became the foundation of everything that followed. The education in divinity. Picture young Alexander. 2 years old. 3, 4. He's in his mother's chambers. The snakes are there, always the snakes. Olympias teaches him to handle them without fear. You are different, she tells him. You are not like other children. You are born of gods. She tells him the story of his conception. Not the boring version where Philip was his father. The exciting version, Zeus, king of gods, came to her in the form of lightning. The thunderbolt struck her womb. Philip is his father-in-law in name, but Zeus is his true father. You are the son of Zeus, she says. Like Heracles. Like Perseus. Like Dionysus himself. You are divine. Alexander is too young to question this. Children believe what their parents tell them, especially when it's repeated constantly, reinforced by ritual, embedded in every story and lesson. She teaches him about Achilles, the greatest warrior of Greek mythology, hero of the Trojan War. Achilles was your ancestor, she tells him. Through me. I am descended from Neoptolemus, Achilles' son. His blood runs in your veins. You are destined for glory like his. She teaches him about Heracles, the demigod strongman, son of Zeus. You are like Heracles, born of a mortal woman and a god. You will perform great labors. You will become immortal through your deeds. Every story, every lesson, every ritual reinforces the same message. You are special. You are chosen. You are divine. You are destined for greatness beyond what any mortal could achieve. This is not normal parental encouragement. This is systematic programming. This is the creation of grandiose narcissism as a tool. And it's incredibly effective. The father's resentment. Philip watches this happening. And he's conflicted. On one hand, he wants his son to be confident, brave, ambitious. These are good qualities for a future king. And Alexander is showing signs of exceptional ability. He's intelligent, physically strong, fearless even as a child. On the other hand, Olympias is teaching Alexander to see himself as Philip's superior. Not son to father, but God to mortal. And that's dangerous. The sources record growing tension between Philip and Olympias. They argue about Alexander's education, about his future, about who has authority over him. Olympias insists Alexander is hers. She bore him, she raised him, he's connected to her through the divine. Philip insists Alexander is his heir, his son, needs to be trained as a Macedonian king, not as some mystical demigod. The compromise is Aristotle. When Alexander is 13, Philip brings in the greatest philosopher of the age to tutor his son. Aristotle will teach logic, science, ethics, politics, rational, Greek, civilized knowledge. But by then it's too late. The foundation has been laid. Alexander's core identity, his deepest belief about himself, has been shaped by Olympias for 13 years. Aristotle teaches him to think. But Olympias taught him to believe. And belief is more powerful than thought when it comes to shaping destiny. The mother-son bond. The relationship between Olympias and Alexander becomes pathological. Not in the sense of unhealthy, though it is, but in the sense of unusual, intense, defining. Alexander adores his mother, trusts her completely, believes her absolutely. When she tells him he's divine, he doesn't question it. When she tells him Philip is just a mortal man who doesn't understand his true nature, he accepts it. This creates a profound split in Alexander's psyche. He's supposed to respect his father, learn from him, eventually succeed him. But his mother has taught him that his father is less than him. Mortal, limited, unworthy of judging a son of Zeus. As Alexander grows older, 10, 11, 12, this tension manifests in his behavior. He's arrogant toward Philip's generals, dismissive of advice, convinced he knows better, because he's been taught, from birth, that he's superior to everyone around him. Philip sees this and worries. He's creating a successor who might be too ambitious, too convinced of his own specialness. But he's also impressed, because Alexander is extraordinary, brilliant militarily, fearless in battle, charismatic, everything a king should be. Maybe Olympias is right, Philip thinks occasionally. Maybe this boy is touched by the gods. That thought is dangerous, because it means Olympias has won. She's convinced not just Alexander, but Philip himself, that her version of reality might be true. The prophecy machine. By the time Alexander is a teenager, Olympias has created something unprecedented. A human being who genuinely believes he's divine and who has the ability to make others believe it too. This is the achievement. Not just convincing a child of his specialness. Many parents do that. But creating someone whose conviction is so complete, so unshakable, that it becomes contagious. That it shapes reality around him. Alexander grows into a young man who expects to succeed at everything because failure is impossible for a son of Zeus. And this expectation, this absolute confidence, makes him succeed. He takes risks other generals wouldn't take because he believes the gods protect him. He inspires loyalty in soldiers because he radiates certainty. He attempts the impossible because he doesn't believe in limits. Olympias has created a self-fulfilling prophecy. She told Alexander he was destined for greatness, and that belief made him great. But prophecies are dangerous things. Because once you set them in motion, you can't control where they go. Alexander is becoming something even Olympias can't fully control. The god she created is outgrowing her authority. The son she programmed is developing his own agenda. And Philip is becoming a problem. Because Philip still sees Alexander as his son, his heir, his property. He makes decisions about Alexander's future without consulting Olympias. He criticizes Alexander's behavior. He tries to assert paternal authority over someone Olympias has taught to see himself as beyond mortal authority. The collision is inevitable, and it comes in 337 BCE, at a wedding feast, when Philip makes a catastrophic mistake. He falls in love. Let's zoom in on the crucial years. The years when Olympias is actively shaping Alexander into something that's never existed before. A human being who believes he's divine and who has the will, intelligence, and charisma to make that belief change the world. The early lessons. Alexander is 5 years old. He's in Olympias's chambers. The room smells of incense, myrrh, frankincense, the expensive aromatics used in religious ceremonies. The snakes are present, always present, coiled in baskets or draped over furniture. Olympias is telling him a story, but it's not a typical children's story. It's carefully constructed mythology designed to embed specific beliefs. "When I was pregnant with you," she says, her voice low, hypnotic, "I had a dream. A thunderbolt fell from the sky and struck my womb. From that strike, fire spread across the entire world. Do you know what that means?" Alexander shakes his head, watching her with wide eyes. "It means you are not Philip's son alone. You are the son of Zeus, the king of gods. Zeus came to me as lightning, as he came to other mortal women before. You are divine, Alexander. Like Heracles, like Dionysus. You are a god walking among men." She brings out a snake, places it gently in Alexander's small hands. He doesn't flinch. He's been around the serpents his whole life. "The serpent is sacred to Zeus and Dionysus," Olympias explains. "It doesn't harm you because you are protected. You are special. Nothing can hurt you because the gods have chosen you." This lesson is repeated. Variations on the theme, but the core message is constant. You are divine. You are destined. You are beyond ordinary human limitations. Modern psychologists would recognize this as a form of conditioning, repetition, ritual, emotional reinforcement, the creation of a core identity that's unshakable because it's been embedded before the child has developed critical thinking skills. The ancestor stories. Olympias doesn't just tell Alexander he's special. She gives him a lineage, a mythology that connects him to the greatest heroes of Greek legend. "Through me," she tells him, "you are descended from Achilles, the greatest warrior who ever lived. His blood runs in your veins. You have his courage, his strength, his destiny for glory." She makes this concrete. She gives Alexander a copy of Homer's Iliad, the epic poem about the Trojan War and Achilles' exploits. She has him memorize passages. She performs dramatic readings, acting out Achilles' battles, his rage, his death. "This is your ancestor," she tells him. "This is what you come from. You are born to be a warrior greater even than Achilles." Through Philip's side, she traces, accurately or not, descent from Heracles, the demigod strongman, son of Zeus. "Heracles performed 12 great labors," she tells Alexander. "You will perform labors that make his seem small. You will conquer not just monsters, but entire kingdoms." This isn't just family pride. This is deliberate construction of a psychological framework. Alexander is being taught to see himself as the heir to the greatest heroes of mythology. Not metaphorically, literally. And here's the crucial thing. Olympias believes this herself, or has convinced herself to believe it. There's no cynical manipulation here, no knowing wink. She's not lying to Alexander. She's teaching him what she considers to be the truth. That sincerity makes it infinitely more powerful. Children can sense when adults are lying or performing. But Olympias isn't performing. She's channeling absolute conviction. And Alexander absorbs it completely. The snake handling. The snakes are central to the programming. They're not just religious symbols. They're tools for teaching fearlessness. Olympias teaches Alexander to handle the serpents from early childhood. She shows him how to move slowly, how to let the snake coil around his arm, how to stay calm even when the reptile's muscles flex and its tongue flickers against his skin. "Fear is for mortals," she tells him. The divine do not fear. If you are truly Zeus's son, the serpent will not harm you. The gods protect their own. This is dangerous. Ancient Macedonian snakes included venomous species. One mistake, one frightened snake, and Alexander could die. But that danger is the point. Because every time Alexander handles the snakes and doesn't get hurt, it reinforces the belief that he's protected, that he's special, that the rules don't apply to him. Modern psychology recognizes this as a form of risk-based conditioning. You expose someone to controlled danger, they survive, and their confidence in their own invulnerability increases. Do it young enough, repeatedly enough, and you create someone genuinely fearless. Alexander grows into a young man who doesn't understand normal human fear. He'll charge into battle ahead of his troops. He'll attempt sieges that his generals consider impossible. He'll take wounds that would make other men retreat and keep fighting. This isn't just bravery. This is something Olympias instilled in him through the snakes, the absolute conviction that he cannot die because the gods won't allow it. The separation from Philip. As Alexander grows older, 7, 8, 9, the split between his parents becomes more pronounced. And Olympias deliberately widens it. When Philip criticizes Alexander, Olympias comforts him. Your father doesn't understand. He's a mortal man. He can't see what you truly are. He fears your greatness. When Philip makes decisions about Alexander's training or education, Olympias undermines them. You don't need to listen to him. He's not truly your father. Zeus is your father. Philip is just the man who raised you. This is psychological warfare. Olympias is severing the bond between father and son, replacing it with the mother-son bond that excludes Philip entirely. But control. As long as Alexander sees Philip as his father and authority figure, Philip has ultimate power over him. But if Alexander sees Philip as merely a mortal stepfather, and Olympias as the keeper of his true divine identity, then Olympias holds the real power. Philip senses this happening. The sources record arguments between Philip and Olympias about Alexander's upbringing. Philip wants to train Alexander as a Macedonian prince, practical, military, pragmatic. Olympias wants to raise him as a divine being, mystical, destined, transcendent. The compromise is fragile and temporary. The demonstration. When Alexander is about 10 or 11 years old, an incident occurs that becomes legendary. A horse dealer brings a magnificent stallion to Philip's court. The horse is huge, black-walled. No one can ride it. The dealer is asking an enormous price. Philip is about to send the dealer away. Why pay for an unrideable horse? When young Alexander speaks up, I can ride him. The court laughs. This is a child talking about riding a warhorse that's thrown every experienced rider. Philip is annoyed at his son's arrogance. But Alexander insists. And Philip, perhaps curious, perhaps wanting to teach his son a lesson in humility, allows it. What happens next is recorded by multiple sources. Alexander observes the horse, notices that it's frightened by its own shadow. He turns the horse toward the sun, so it can't see the shadow, speaks to it calmly and mounts it. The horse, calm now, allows Alexander to ride. Philip, according to Plutarch, weeps and says, "My boy, you must find a kingdom big enough for your ambitions. Macedon is too small for you." This story is probably embellished, but the core truth, that Alexander demonstrated unusual ability and confidence at a young age, is likely accurate. And for Olympias, this incident is proof, confirmation that her son is indeed special, that the divine blood shows itself through exceptional ability. She tells Alexander, "You see? The horse obeyed you because you are Zeus's son." Animals recognize the divine. The horse, by the way, is named Bucephalus. It becomes Alexander's personal warhorse, carrying him through his conquests. Another element of the mythology Olympias is building. The Aristotelian interruption. When Alexander turns 13, Philip makes a decision that temporarily disrupts Olympias's control. He hires Aristotle. Aristotle is, at this point, already famous. A philosopher, scientist, student of Plato, one of the greatest minds in Greece. Philip brings him to Macedon specifically to tutor Alexander. The lessons take place at Mysa, away from the capital, away from Olympias. For 3 years, Alexander studies philosophy, science, medicine, ethics, poetry. Aristotle teaches him to think rationally, to question, to analyze. This should undermine everything Olympias has taught. Rational philosophy versus mystical religion. Logic versus faith. But it doesn't work that way. Because Aristotle is teaching Alexander how to think, but Olympias has already taught him what to believe. And beliefs embedded in early childhood, reinforced through ritual and emotion, are incredibly resistant to logic. Alexander learns Aristotle's lessons, becomes genuinely educated, philosophically sophisticated. But underneath that education, the core identity remains. I am the son of Zeus. I am destined for greatness. The gods protect me. The two worldviews coexist. Alexander can discuss ethics with philosophers and then sacrifice to Zeus, believing the god is literally his father. Rational and mystical, side by side. This makes him more dangerous, not less. Because now he has both divine confidence and intellectual sophistication. Faith and reason. Mysticism and military strategy. Olympias has created something unprecedented. A religious zealot with the mind of a philosopher and the training of a warrior. The return. When Alexander is 16, his education with Aristotle ends. He returns to Philip's court. And the tension between father and son has only grown. Philip sees a young man who's arrogant, convinced of his own superiority, dismissive of authority. He's both proud and worried. Proud because Alexander is clearly brilliant. Worried because that brilliance is coupled with a sense of divine entitlement that makes Alexander difficult to control. Olympias sees her masterpiece. The boy she shaped from birth is becoming exactly what she designed. A conqueror who believes conquest is his divine right. But there's a problem. Philip is still king. Philip still makes the decisions. And Philip is starting to make decisions that threaten everything Olympias has built. He's winning the military campaigns, unifying Greece, preparing for the invasion of Persia that will be his crowning achievement. And he's doing it without needing Olympias's input or approval. Worse, he's accumulating more wives, more sons. Alexander's position as heir presumptive is secure for now, but it's not guaranteed. If Philip produces another son with a more compliant wife, or if Alexander's arrogance becomes too much of a liability, Olympias can feel her power slipping. She spent 17 years creating Alexander. But Philip controls Alexander's future. As long as Philip lives, Philip decides when and how Alexander inherits. This is intolerable to Olympias. She's not content to be the power behind the throne. She wants to be the power behind the god. And Philip is in the way. She starts planning. Not consciously, perhaps. Not with a clear conspiracy in mind. But calculating. Watching for opportunities. Waiting for Philip to make a mistake. The mistake comes in 337 BCE. And it's catastrophic. Philip falls in love. To understand why Philip's final marriage was so devastating, we need to understand the complex politics of Macedonian polygamy. Because Philip didn't just have multiple wives for pleasure. He had them for strategy. And that strategy was about to backfire spectacularly. The political harem. By 337 BCE, Philip has been married at least 7 times. Let's understand what each marriage accomplished. Philadelphia of Elymia. His first wife, married to secure loyalty from Elymia, a region of Upper Macedon. Strategic, preventing civil war. Eurydice of Illyria, married to secure peace with the Illyrians, Macedon's northern enemies. She brought military alliance. Had a daughter, Philina of Larissa, from Thessaly, married to secure Thessalian alliance. Had a son, Philip Aridaeus, who was mentally disabled, possibly epileptic or developmentally delayed. Olympias of Epirus, for alliance with Epirus and her royal mystical pedigree. Had Alexander and a daughter, Cleopatra. Medea of Odessos, a Thracian princess, married to secure Thrace. Strategic frontier marriage. Nicephilus of Pherai, another Thessalian marriage, reinforcing control of that region. Had a daughter, Thessalonic. Each marriage was a chess move. Each wife represented political stability in a different region. Each child was a living treaty, binding their mother's homeland to Macedon. This was how you built an empire in ancient Greece. Not just through conquest, but through kinship. Through creating a web of family relationships that made rebellion costly. But here's the problem with strategic polygamy: the wives compete. Their sons compete. And eventually, the question of succession becomes existential for everyone involved. The hierarchy. In Philip's harem, there was a clear hierarchy. Not official. Macedon didn't have formal ranks for wives, but understood. Olympias held the top position. Because Alexander was clearly the most promising heir. Brilliant, charismatic, already proving himself militarily. Philip's other sons were either too young, mentally disabled Aridaeus, or daughters who couldn't inherit. Alexander's position as heir apparent gave Olympias power. She wasn't just Philip's wife. She was the mother of the future king. That mattered. That made people defer to her, fear her, court her favor. She wielded this power. Sources describe her as domineering, difficult, constantly involved in court politics. She had favorites among Philip's generals. She had enemies. She accumulated influence the way other people accumulate wealth. But her position was fragile, because it depended entirely on Alexander remaining Philip's chosen heir. And Philip was starting to have doubts. Not about Alexander's ability, about his attitude, the growing rift. By his late teens, Alexander is displaying troubling behaviors, troubling to Philip at least. He's arrogant toward Philip's generals, dismissing their advice. He's impatient with his father's careful, methodical strategy. He wants glory now, not when Philip decides to grant it. When Philip leaves Alexander as regent during a military campaign, Alexander is 16. Alexander attacks and defeats a Thracian tribe on his own initiative. He's successful, brilliantly successful, but he acted without orders. He was supposed to keep Macedon stable, not start new wars. Philip is caught between pride and annoyance. Proud that his son is capable. Annoyed that his son is uncontrollable. The sources record increasing arguments between them. About military strategy. About Alexander's role in Philip's campaigns. About the future. And always, in the background, Olympias. Whispering to Alexander that Philip doesn't understand him. That Philip is threatened by his greatness. That Philip is just a mortal who fears his divine son. Philip knows Olympias is poisoning Alexander against him. But he can't stop it. They're too close, mother and son, bonded in a way that excludes him. And then, in 337 BCE, Philip makes a decision that will destroy everything. He marries again. Cleopatra Eurydice. Her name was Cleopatra, but she's often called Cleopatra Eurydice to distinguish her from the famous Egyptian queen. She was young, Sources suggest 16 to 18 years old. She was beautiful. And most importantly, she was Macedonian. All of Philip's other wives were foreign. They brought alliances, but they were always slightly other. Illyrian, Thessalian, Epirote. Olympias, for all her royal blood, was still from Epirus. Foreign. Known for strange religious practices. But Cleopatra Eurydice was Macedonian nobility. From a powerful family. Her uncle was Attalus, one of Philip's most important generals. And Philip loved her. Not strategic affection. Actual passion. At 46 years old, scarred and exhausted from decades of war, Philip fell for a girl young enough to be his granddaughter. This was dangerous. Because love makes you stupid. Strategic marriages you can manage politically. But when a king genuinely loves one wife above others, it destabilizes the entire power structure. Olympias saw the threat immediately. This wasn't just another political marriage. This was competition for Philip's affection, attention, and, most dangerously, for the position of mother to his heir. If Cleopatra Eurydice bore Philip a son, that son would be fully Macedonian. No foreign mother. No weird snake cult associations. No claims of divine paternity to make the generals uncomfortable. That son could challenge Alexander's position, which means that son was an existential threat to everything Olympias had built for 17 years. The wedding feast. The wedding celebration is lavish. Philip wants to show off. He's just finished conquering most of Greece. He's preparing to invade Persia. He's at the peak of his power. This wedding is a victory celebration as much as a marriage ceremony. Alexander is present. He has to be. He's the heir apparent. He can't boycott his father's wedding without causing a scandal. But he's tense. Humiliated by his father taking another wife, another young beautiful wife, as if Olympias, his mother, the priestess, the keeper of his divine identity, is replaceable. Olympias may or may not be physically present. Sources disagree. But her influence is there. Alexander carries her resentment, her rage, her sense of betrayal. The feast proceeds. Wine flows. Philip is drunk, happy, celebrating. His generals toast him. Poems are recited. Musicians perform. Then Attalus, Cleopatra Eurydice's uncle, now Philip's uncle-in-law, stands to make a toast. He's drunk too. And he says something catastrophic. Now finally we can hope for a legitimate heir to the throne of Macedon. Silence falls across the hall. Because everyone understands the implication. Alexander, son of foreign Olympias with her snake cult witchcraft, is somehow illegitimate. Tainted. Not truly Macedonian enough. Cleopatra Eurydice's future son will be the true, pure Macedonian heir. The explosion. Alexander explodes. He throws his cup at Attalus. Shouts, "What am I, then? A bastard?" The hall erupts in chaos. Philip, drunk and enraged that his son is disrupting the celebration, staggers to his feet. He draws his sword, stumbles toward Alexander, and falls. Just collapses. Too drunk, too unsteady on his damaged leg, too old to maintain balance. Alexander stands over his fallen father, and he says, loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Behold, men! The man who would cross from Europe to Asia cannot even cross from couch to couch." It's devastating mockery, emasculating, public humiliation of the king by his own son. Philip lies on the ground, drunk, fallen, knocked. And in that moment, something breaks. The relationship between father and son, already strained, fractures completely. The exile. Within days, Alexander and Olympias leave Macedon. They don't flee, they're not arrested or chased. But they leave, making a statement. Olympias returns to Epirus, her homeland, where her brother Alexandros is king. She'll be safe there. Protected. Alexander goes to Illyria, taking some of his companions with him. He's making a point. If Philip doesn't want him as heir, he can find other options. Illyria was traditionally Macedon's enemy. Alexander going there is a threat. This is a crisis. Philip's heir has left. Publicly. Dramatically. The succession is suddenly uncertain. And Greece, which Philip has barely finished conquering, is watching. Any sign of instability in Macedon could trigger rebellions. Philip's advisors panic. They pressure him to reconcile with Alexander. This quarrel is dangerous. Destabilizing. Eventually, Philip sends an envoy, Demaratus of Corinth, a mutual friend. Offers reconciliation. Alexander can return. The insult at the wedding will be overlooked. Alexander agrees. But the damage is done. The relationship between father and son is broken. Alexander has learned that Philip can humiliate him. Olympias has seen that her position is not secure. And both of them have realized something crucial. As long as Philip lives, as long as Cleopatra Eurydice lives, as long as the possibility exists of a legitimate Macedonian heir being born, everything Olympias has built is at risk. The solution is obvious. Dangerous. Unthinkable. But obvious. Philip has to die. Let's slow down and really examine this moment. Because this is the turning point. This is when Olympias transforms from ambitious queen to something darker. This is when the snake strikes. The humiliation. Put yourself in Olympias's position. You're in your early 40s. You've spent more than 20 years as Philip's wife. You've borne him the most brilliant heir any Macedonian king has ever had. You've shaped that heir into something extraordinary, a young man who believes he's destined to conquer the world. And Philip is replacing you. Not officially, you're still technically queen. But in every way that matters, you're being set aside for a girl 25 years younger. This isn't just romantic rejection. This is political annihilation. Because in a polygamous court, your power depends on your son's position. And your son's position has just been publicly questioned by Cleopatra Eurydice's uncle at her wedding feast. Legitimate heir. That word, legitimate, implies Alexander is illegitimate, tainted, less than. All because his mother is foreign, practices strange religious rites, doesn't fit the image of proper Macedonian womanhood. The rage must have been incandescent. 20 years of marriage. 20 years of tolerating Philip's other wives. 20 years of political maneuvering. And now this. But Olympias doesn't rage openly. She's smarter than that. She retreats to Epirus. Appears defeated. Waits. Because she understands something Philip doesn't. Time is on her side. The pregnancy timeline. Cleopatra Eurydice married Philip in 337 BC. Within months, she's pregnant. This is excellent news for Philip. Proof that his new young wife is fertile, that she'll bear him sons. But it's a ticking clock for Olympias. Because once Cleopatra delivers a healthy son, Alexander's position becomes precarious. Philip might not disinherit Alexander immediately, but the existence of a fully Macedonian heir creates options Philip didn't have before. And options are dangerous to people who hold power by default rather than by right. Olympias knows she has perhaps 9 months, the length of Cleopatra's pregnancy, to act. After that, the political landscape changes permanently. What can she do? She's in Epirus, exiled from court. She has no direct power in Macedon. She can't order assassinations herself. Philip's guards wouldn't obey her. But she has money. She has connections. She has knowledge of who in Philip's court is unhappy, who has grievances, who might be manipulated. And she has Alexander, her son, who loves her, who trusts her absolutely, who has just been publicly humiliated by his father. The conspiracy begins to form. Not explicitly, perhaps. Not with written plans or clear agreements. But through whispered conversations, through hints, through the careful cultivation of resentment and opportunity. The wedding games. Philip announces celebrations for autumn 336 BCE. His daughter Cleopatra, from an earlier wife, not the new bride, is marrying Alexander of Epirus, Olympias's brother. It's a major diplomatic event, reuniting the Macedonian and Epirote royal families, healing the rift caused by Olympias's exile. The celebrations will be held at Aigai, the old capital of Macedon. Massive games, athletic competitions, theatrical performances, sacrifices to the gods. A show of Macedonian power and unity before Philip launches his invasion of Persia. Olympias will attend. She has to. It's her daughter's wedding, her brother is the groom. This is her chance to return to Macedon with dignity. But it's also an opportunity. Philip will be in a public place, surrounded by crowds, possibly without full security. If something were to happen, Pausanias the bodyguard. There's a man in Philip's court named Pausanias. He's one of the royal bodyguards, a position of trust and honor. But Pausanias has a grievance. The story, preserved in ancient sources, is ugly. Pausanias had been the favorite of one of Philip's generals, Attalus, yes, the same Attalus who insulted Alexander at the wedding. But then Philip himself became sexually involved with Pausanias, displacing the general. Attalus, humiliated and angry, took revenge on Pausanias. He invited him to dinner, got him drunk, and then either raped him himself or allowed his servants to gang-rape him. Sources vary on the details, but the assault is consistently reported. Pausanias complained to Philip, asked for justice. But Philip did nothing. Attalus was too politically valuable. He was now Philip's uncle-in-law through the Cleopatra-Eurydice marriage. Philip couldn't afford to punish him. Instead, Philip tried to placate Pausanias with a promotion and gifts. But Pausanias remained furious, humiliated, violated, and ignored by the king who should have protected him. This is documented. This is not conspiracy theory. Ancient sources all agree that Pausanias had a legitimate personal grievance against Philip. But here's the question historians debate. Did someone exploit that grievance? Did someone whisper to Pausanias that killing Philip would be justice? Did someone provide money, encouragement, a plan? Did Olympias? The morning of the assassination. October 336 BCE. The theater at Aigai is filling with spectators. Philip has ordered a spectacular opening to the games. He'll enter the theater in a procession with his son Alexander and his new son-in-law Alexander of Epirus, Olympias's brother. Philip makes a decision that sources describe as unusual. He orders his bodyguards to stay back, to enter the theater after him. He wants to appear confident, unafraid, trusting. A show of strength. This is remarkably stupid for a king who has dozens of enemies. But Philip is at the peak of his power. He's conquered Greece. He's about to invade Persia. He's invincible. Or so he thinks. The procession begins. Philip walks toward the theater entrance. The crowd cheers. Sunlight streams across the stone. It's a perfect morning for triumph. Pausanias steps out of the crowd. He's been waiting in the crowd, sword hidden under his cloak. He's one of Philip's own bodyguards. His presence near the king wouldn't seem unusual. He draws the sword, moves quickly, stabs Philip in the side, between the ribs, into the heart or lungs. Philip collapses. Blood spreads across his ceremonial robes. The cheering turns to screaming. Pausanias runs. He has horses waiting outside the theater, escape planned in advance. But he trips over a vine or root, falls. Philip's other bodyguards, who were behind in the procession, catch up to him. They kill him immediately. Swords through his body. No arrest. No questioning. Just instant execution. This is suspicious. If they wanted to know who was behind the assassination, they should have taken Pausanias alive. But he's killed before he can talk. Before he can name any conspirators. The immediate aftermath. Philip is dead. Killed by one of his own bodyguards, in front of hundreds of witnesses, at his daughter's wedding celebration. The army is present, thousands of soldiers attending the games. They immediately proclaim Alexander as king. No debate. No discussion of other candidates. Just instant acclamation. This is also suspicious. In Macedonian tradition, the army has a voice in succession. There should be discussion, perhaps competition between potential heirs. But Alexander is proclaimed so quickly, so unanimously, it suggests preparation. Organization. Within hours, Alexander has secured the throne. Within days, he's ordered the execution of potential rivals, other sons of Philip by other wives, anyone who might claim the throne. Olympias returns to Macedon from Epirus. Not as exiled former queen, but as queen mother. Vindicated. Restored. Her son is king. And Cleopatra Eurydice, the young bride who displaced her? We'll get to what happens to her. But spoiler, it's horrific. The conspiracy question. So, was Olympias behind Philip's assassination? Ancient sources strongly suspect she was. Plutarch suggests it. Justin states it outright. Modern historians debate it. Some think she was involved, others think Pausanias acted alone out of personal rage. Here's the evidence for conspiracy. Motive: Olympias had overwhelming motive. Philip's marriage to Cleopatra Eurydice threatened everything she'd built. His death solved all her problems. Means: she had money, connections, the ability to communicate with people in Philip's court even from Epirus. Opportunity: the assassination happened at her daughter's wedding, an event she was attending. She was in the right place at the right time to coordinate. Pausanias' escape plan. He had horses waiting, suggesting he expected to survive. Someone may have promised him protection or a hiding place. Pausanias' immediate execution, killing him before he could be questioned, is classic conspiracy behavior. Eliminate the man who could name the conspirators. Alexander's preparation. The speed with which Alexander secured the throne suggests advanced planning. He knew it was coming. Olympias' actions afterward. She crowned Pausanias' corpse with a golden wreath, a huge honor for a regicide, built him a tomb, and allegedly performed annual sacrifices at his grave. This is either gratitude to an assassin who served her, or extremely bizarre behavior toward her husband's murderer. Here's the evidence against Pausanias' documented grievance. He had legitimate personal reasons to kill Philip. He didn't need outside encouragement. Ancient sources are biased. They're written by people who hated powerful women and were eager to paint Olympias as a villain. No confession. We don't have any direct evidence. No testimony from Pausanias, dead too quickly. No written plans. No witnesses to conspiracy meetings. The truth? We'll never know for certain. But the circumstantial evidence is strong enough that most historians think Olympias was at least involved, even if Pausanias did the actual killing for his own reasons. Whether she ordered it, encouraged it, or simply created conditions where she knew someone would do it, the result was the same. Philip died. Alexander became king. Olympias returned to power. And everyone who threatened her position was about to learn what a snake does when it strikes. Let's reconstruct that morning in October 336 BC. Let's walk through the theater at Aigai, step by step, and understand not just what happened, but what it meant. The stage is set. The theater is ancient, built into a hillside, stone benches arranged in semicircular tiers. It can hold perhaps 10,000 people. For these games, the wedding celebration for Philip's daughter Cleopatra and Alexander of Epirus, it's packed. The crowd is diverse. Macedonian nobles in expensive cloaks, generals with their military decorations, foreign dignitaries from across Greece, commoners from Aigai and surrounding areas who've come for the free entertainment and the distribution of food Philip promised. Everyone is excited. These are the last celebrations before Philip launches his invasion of Persia, the war he's been planning for years, the campaign that will make him master of the known world. The mood is triumphant. Macedon has gone from backward kingdom to dominant power in one generation. Philip has done the impossible. And now he's about to do more. Dawn breaks. The procession is about to begin. Philip will enter the theater at the head of the ceremony, followed by his son Alexander, his new son-in-law Alexander of Epirus, and the wedding party. But first, Philip makes a decision. He orders his bodyguards, the men whose entire job is to stay physically near him at all times, to hold back, to let him enter the theater alone. But, according to Diodorus Siculus, Philip wanted to display his confidence in the goodwill of all the Greeks. A show of strength, a demonstration that he trusts his people, fears nothing, needs no protection. The ancient Greeks called it hubris, and the gods punished hubris. The procession begins. Philip steps forward. He's wearing ceremonial robes, white and purple. His right eye is missing, covered by a patch or simply an empty socket. Sources disagree. He limps slightly on the damaged leg. His body shows the accumulated damage of decades of warfare. But he's smiling. This is his moment, the peak of his power. Behind him, Alexander, 20 years old, already showing signs of the military genius he'll become. But his face is tense, strained. He's been reconciled with his father, but the relationship is still damaged from the wedding feast incident. Is Alexander complicit in what's about to happen? Does he know? Ancient sources suggest he didn't. But Olympias is his mother. They're close. If she knew, would she have told him? The crowd cheers as Philip appears. A statue of Philip is being carried in the procession too. Philip has commissioned statues of himself alongside the 12 Olympian gods, positioning himself as the 13th deity. Megalomaniacal, certainly. But that's the image he's cultivating, the man who will surpass mortal limits. Philip enters the narrow passage leading into the theater proper. The walls close in, stone on either side, perhaps 3 meters wide. The crowd is dense ahead of him. The bodyguards are behind, as ordered, and Pausanias is in the crowd, waiting. It happens fast. Pausanias emerges from the crowd. He's wearing a cloak that conceals the short sword, a kopis, probably the curved blade Macedonian cavalry used. He's one of Philip's own bodyguards. His presence near the king wouldn't immediately alarm anyone. He's supposed to be there. He draws the sword. Quick, practiced motion. And he stabs. The blade enters Philip's left side, between the ribs. Pausanias knows anatomy. He's a soldier, trained to kill. The strike is precise, aimed at the heart or the lungs or the major blood vessels. Philip gasps. His hand goes to his side, comes away bloody. He staggers, tries to call out. Collapses. The cheering turns to screaming. Chaos erupts. People pushing, trying to get away or trying to see what happened. The procession dissolves into panic. And Pausanias runs. He doesn't stay to fight. Doesn't try to confirm the kill. He runs, pushing through the crowd, heading for the theater exit. Outside there are horses. 3 horses, sources say. Waiting. Saddled. Ready for fast escape. This detail is crucial. The horses didn't just happen to be there. Someone arranged them. Someone planned this. Pausanias expected to escape. He reaches the horses. tries to mount. And then, according to multiple ancient sources, he trips. Caught his foot on a grapevine or a root or the uneven ground. And the bodyguards reach him. The men who were supposed to be protecting Philip, who were held back by Philip's own orders, who now need to redeem their failure by catching the assassin. They don't arrest him. They kill him. Swords through his chest, his throat, his body. Multiple wounds. Instant death. No, stop. We need to question him. No, take him alive so we can find out who sent him. Just immediate execution. This is either panic, guards who failed in their duty overcompensating, or it's conspiracy. Eliminating the one person who could name who else was involved. Philip's death. Back in the theater passage, Philip is dying or already dead. The wound was fatal. He's bleeding out on the ground, his ceremonial white robes soaked red. Alexander rushes to his father. Some sources suggest he cradled Philip's head. Others say he immediately started securing the area, barking orders to the guards. Is Alexander grieving? Shocked? Or is there a part of him, a part shaped by Olympias's whispers, that feels vindicated? The mortal father who didn't understand his divine son has fallen. The gods have acted. Physicians are summoned, but there's nothing they can do. The wound is too severe. Philip dies there, in the passage, surrounded by chaos. His body is carried back to the palace. The wedding celebrations are cancelled. The games are postponed. Macedon is suddenly without a king. And the question on everyone's mind, who's next? The instant succession. Here's what's suspicious. There's no debate. No discussion. No competition. In Macedonian tradition, succession wasn't purely hereditary. The army had a say. The generals had influence. There could be rival claimants, civil war, years of instability. But not this time. Within hours, possibly within minutes, the army gathered at Aigai proclaims Alexander as king. Unanimously. Immediately. No dissent. This suggests preparation. Organization. The generals and military commanders must have been primed, must have known this was the plan. You don't get instant unanimous acclamation without advance work. Did Alexander know Philip was going to die? The sources are ambiguous. But someone prepared for this succession. Someone made sure that when Philip fell, Alexander would rise without competition. Olympias. She wasn't in the theater when it happened. She was probably in the palace or in the wedding preparations. But her influence was there. The groundwork she'd laid, the relationships she'd cultivated, the story she'd built about Alexander's divine destiny, all of it activated in that moment. The army proclaimed Alexander because they'd been taught to see him as special. Destined. The obvious choice. Olympias had spent 20 years building that narrative. And now it paid off. The purge begins. Alexander moves quickly. Ruthlessly. Within days, potential rivals are eliminated. Amyntas IV, Philip's nephew, technically a possible claimant to the throne. Executed. Carinus, one of Philip's sons by another wife. Executed. Attalus, the general who insulted Alexander at the wedding feast, uncle of Cleopatra Eurydice. He's away with an advance force in Asia preparing for the Persian invasion. Alexander sends assassins. Attalus is killed. This is not unusual. Royal successions in ancient monarchies were often bloody. You eliminated rivals to prevent civil war. Practical, brutal. But the speed of it, the efficiency, it suggests planning. Alexander, or someone advising him, had a list of people to eliminate ready before Philip died. And the most brutal elimination? That's coming. Because Olympias has returned to Macedon. And she has a score to settle with the young bride who replaced her. This is the chapter where Olympias's true nature reveals itself. where the snake stops hiding and strikes with full venom. What she does to Cleopatra Eurydice is so horrific that it defines her legacy for 2,000 years. The return. Olympias comes back to Macedon from Epirus probably within days of Philip's death. She's technically invited, her son is now king, she's queen mother. But she's also coming to settle accounts. She returns to a palace that's different from when she left. Cleopatra Eurydice has been living there as Philip's wife. Her possessions are in the royal chambers. Her servants are in the palace. She's made it her home. And she's pregnant. Or she's just given birth. Sources are unclear on the exact timeline, but we know Cleopatra Eurydice had an infant daughter, possibly named Europa. Olympias sees Cleopatra, young, beautiful, mother to Philip's child. Everything Olympias was replaced with. And she makes a decision. This girl and her child have to die. Not just die, be destroyed so completely that no one will ever again question Alexander's legitimacy or Olympias's position. The exact sequence of events is uncertain. Ancient sources disagree on details. But the broad strokes are consistent across Plutarch, Justin, Pausanias, and other historians. Olympias orders Cleopatra Eurydice and her infant daughter arrested. On what charge? None is specified. Olympias doesn't need charges. She's queen mother. Her son is king. Her word is law. Cleopatra is taken from wherever she's living, the palace, presumably, and brought to some confined space. A room. A chamber. Somewhere Olympias can control what happens. The baby is with her. The sources are consistent on this. Cleopatra is holding her infant daughter when the horror begins. The murder of the child. What happens next is so brutal that even ancient sources, which are generally comfortable with violence, seem shocked by it. Olympias has the infant killed, in front of Cleopatra, while Cleopatra is holding her. The method varies in different accounts. Justin says Olympias roasted the infant alive. Pausanias suggests the child was killed by other means. The specifics are less important than the fact. Olympias murdered an infant, and she made the mother watch. But this isn't just eliminating a potential rival, though the child was a fully Macedonian heir to Philip's legacy. This is psychological torture. This is breaking Cleopatra completely before killing her. This is revenge elevated to ritual. Picture Cleopatra. She's perhaps 18 years old. She's been married for less than 2 years. Her husband, the king, the conqueror, the man who promised her a royal future, is dead. And now the mother of his eldest son has come for her. She's holding her baby. Maybe the child is crying, frightened by the strangers, the hostile atmosphere. Maybe Cleopatra is begging, pleading for her daughter's life, offering anything, promising to leave Macedon, to never threaten Alexander's position. Olympias doesn't care. The order is given. The infant is taken or killed while in Cleopatra's arms. And Cleopatra has to watch. Has to hear her child's cries. Has to live with that for however long it takes before her own death comes. Cleopatra's death. Now Olympias gives Cleopatra a choice. Not really a choice, a cruel illusion of agency. Cleopatra can commit suicide, dying with some small shred of dignity. Or she can refuse and be executed more brutally. Suicide in ancient Greece and Rome was sometimes considered an honorable alternative to execution, especially for aristocrats. A chance to die on your own terms, to avoid the humiliation of public execution. But there's nothing honorable about what Olympias is offering. Because Cleopatra has just watched her infant daughter die. She's traumatized, broken. And now she's being told to kill herself while holding her dead child. According to the sources, Cleopatra chooses suicide. She hangs herself. The rope, the stool or chair kicked away, the slow strangulation. Whether she actually chose this or whether she was murdered and it was staged as suicide, we'll never know. But the image that the sources preserve is specific and devastating. Cleopatra hanging, her dead infant in her lap or at her feet. The message: this isn't just murder. This is theater. This is Olympias making a statement. This is what happens when you try to replace me. This is what happens when you threaten my son's legitimacy. I am not a soft woman who accepts being discarded. I am the snake. I am the priestess of Dionysus, god of madness and death. And I will destroy anyone who touches what is mine. The murder of Cleopatra and her child is meant to be known, meant to be whispered about, meant to inspire terror. And it works. After this, no one in Macedon questions Alexander's position as heir. No one suggests that maybe Philip's other sons have claims. No one speaks against Olympias, because they've seen what she does to people who threaten her. The other murders. Cleopatra Eurydice isn't Olympias's only victim. She conducts a broader purge of Philip's other children and their mothers. Philip Aridaeus, Philip's son by Philina of Larissa, Alexander's half-brother. He's mentally disabled, possibly epileptic or developmentally delayed. He's not a real threat. But Olympias reportedly tries to poison him or worsen his condition. He survives, but damaged further. Europa, if this is indeed a separate person from Cleopatra's infant, some sources mention another daughter of Philip by Cleopatra Eurydice, possibly a toddler. The exact body count is uncertain. Ancient sources give different numbers. But the pattern is clear. Olympias eliminates anyone who could potentially challenge Alexander's sole claim to Philip's legacy. This isn't unusual in royal succession. Purges were common. What makes Olympias's purge horrifying is the method, the intimate, personal cruelty, the murder of infants, the psychological torture of mothers forced to watch their children die. This goes beyond political necessity. This is pathological. The ancient judgment. Ancient sources are unanimous in their horror. Plutarch calls Olympias a woman of jealous and vindictive temper. Justin says she did not even spare the wife's daughter, but most barbarously murdered the infant. Pausanias describes her as reveling in cruelty. Even sources generally hostile to Philip, because he conquered their cities, are appalled by what Olympias did to his widow and child. And yet, here's the complicated part: Olympias apparently saw this as justice, as necessary, as the cleansing of threats to her son's divine destiny. In her mind, Cleopatra Eurydice was the woman who tried to steal what rightfully belonged to Alexander. The infant was a potential rival, a false heir. By eliminating them, Olympias was protecting Alexander's God-given right to rule. The snakes don't feel guilt. They strike when threatened. And Olympias saw herself as the serpent defending her young. The psychological analysis. Modern psychology would recognize several disorders in Olympias's behavior. Narcissistic personality disorder, her complete inability to empathize with others, her belief that her needs and goals justify any action. Paranoid tendencies, her perception of constant threats, her need to eliminate potential rivals even when those rivals are infants. Religious mania, her belief that divine will justified her actions, that she was acting as an instrument of the gods. But diagnosing historical figures is speculative. What we can say with certainty: Olympias was capable of extraordinary cruelty when she perceived threats to her position or her son's destiny. She'd spent 20+ years building Alexander into a god-king. She'd survived Philip's other wives, his political maneuvering, his humiliations. She'd orchestrated or at least facilitated Philip's assassination. And now that Alexander was king, now that her position was secure, she was going to make absolutely certain it stayed that way. No matter how many babies she had to murder. Alexander is king. He's 20 years old, the most powerful person in Greece. And he's about to prove that Olympias's programming worked, perhaps too well. Within 2 years of Philip's death, Alexander will invade Persia. Within 10 years, he'll conquer the largest empire the world has ever seen. And he'll do it because he genuinely believes he's the son of Zeus, destined for glory, protected by the gods. Everything Olympias told him? He believed it. Completely. And it made him unstoppable. But it also made him something else, increasingly uncontrollable. Even by Olympias. The first campaigns. Before Alexander can invade Persia, he has to secure his position in Greece. Because Philip's death has triggered rebellions. Cities that submitted to Philip think maybe the 20-year-old son won't be as effective. They're wrong. Alexander moves with shocking speed. He marches north, defeats the Illyrians and Thracians in brutal campaigns. Then he turns south. The city of Thebes has rebelled, thinking Alexander is too young, too inexperienced. Alexander besieges Thebes, takes it, and then, on Olympias's alleged advice, destroys it completely. The city is razed. 6,000 Thebans are killed. 30,000 are sold into slavery. Thebes, one of Greece's greatest cities, is erased from the map. This is meant to be a message: I am not my father. I am worse. Do not test me. The rest of Greece submits. And Alexander prepares for Persia. The letters. Alexander and Olympias maintain correspondence throughout his campaigns. Some of these letters survive in ancient sources, though whether they're genuine or reconstructions is debated. The pattern is consistent. Olympias writes constantly, demanding updates, giving advice, complaining about rivals in Macedon, asking Alexander to punish people who've offended her. Alexander's responses grow increasingly terse. He's busy conquering the Persian Empire. He doesn't have time for his mother's court intrigues. One famous exchange, recorded by Plutarch. Olympias writes complaining about Antipater, the general Alexander left in charge of Macedon during his absence. She accuses Antipater of disrespecting her, of making decisions without consulting her, of treating her like an ordinary woman rather than queen mother. Alexander allegedly replies, "My mother demands high rent for the 9 months she lodged me in her womb." It's a joke, but a pointed one. He's acknowledging her role in making him, but also suggesting she's overcharging. That she wants more credit, more power, more influence than she's entitled to. The relationship is shifting. Olympias created a god-king, but god-kings don't need mothers. They don't take orders from anyone, not even the woman who made them. The divine claims escalate. As Alexander conquers, his divine claims become more explicit. This isn't just Olympias whispering in childhood anymore. Alexander is publicly claiming divine status. When he reaches Egypt in 332 BCE, he visits the oracle of Zeus Ammon at Siwa Oasis. What the oracle tells him is secret, but Alexander comes out claiming the god confirmed he's Zeus's son. He starts wearing the ram's horns of Zeus Ammon in his iconography. Coins show him with the horns. He's not just descended from gods, he is a god. He adopts Persian imperial customs, having people prostrate themselves before him, wearing elaborate Eastern robes. His Macedonian generals hate this. It's not Greek. It's not Macedonian. It's Oriental despotism. But Alexander doesn't care. Because he believes he's founding a universal empire, and universal emperors need universal respect. And respect for a god-king requires submission. This is the logical endpoint of Olympias's programming. She told him he was divine. She raised him to expect worship. And now he's actually receiving it and demanding more. The murders begin. But divine status has a dark side. Because if you're a god, anyone who questions you is committing blasphemy. And blasphemy deserves death. Alexander starts executing his own generals and friends for perceived disloyalty. Philotas, 330 BC, a general accused of conspiracy. Tortured. Executed. His father, Parmenion, one of Philip's greatest generals, also executed on Alexander's orders despite no evidence against him. Clitus the Black, 328 BC, one of Alexander's oldest friends, who saved his life in battle. During a drunken feast, Clitus criticizes Alexander for abandoning Macedonian customs and claiming to be superior to Philip. Alexander, enraged, grabs a spear and kills him personally. After killing Clitus, Alexander has a breakdown. Refuses to eat for days. Realizes he's killed a friend over criticism. But the pattern continues. Paranoia grows. Anyone who questions Alexander's divine status or his increasingly Eastern behavior is a potential enemy. The distance from Olympias. Olympias watches this from Macedon, thousands of miles away. And she's losing influence. Alexander won't come back. He campaigns year after year, deeper into Asia. He's in Persia, then Central Asia, then India. He's conquering, founding cities, marrying Persian noblewomen, becoming more foreign, more distant. Olympias writes, "Come home. Visit your mother. Remember your Macedonian roots." Alexander doesn't come. He's busy building an empire. And he's starting to find his mother's letters irritating. Her constant complaints about Antipater, her demands for more power in Macedon, her attempts to control him, it's all becoming tiresome. She created a conqueror who believes he's divine. And now that conqueror has outgrown her. He doesn't need her approval anymore. Doesn't need her guidance. Doesn't need her at all. This is Olympias's tragedy. She succeeded completely. Too completely. The son she programmed to believe he was a god now acts like a god. And gods don't have mothers. They spring fully formed from divine will. The marriage issue. Alexander marries several times during his campaigns. Persian noblewomen, political marriages to cement his control of conquered territories. Olympias hates this. She wanted Alexander to marry a Macedonian woman of appropriate aristocratic background. Instead, he's marrying foreigners she has no control over, foreigners who might bear him sons that would dilute Alexander's connection to her bloodline. She's particularly hostile to Roxana, Alexander's first major foreign wife, a Bactrian princess. Olympias never meets Roxana, but she writes letters criticizing the marriage, questioning whether Roxana's children would be legitimate heirs. History repeating. Olympias, who was once the foreign wife criticized by Macedonian aristocrats, is now criticizing her son's foreign wife. The cycle of xenophobia and legitimacy questions continues. But Alexander doesn't care about his mother's objections. He's building a universal empire. Greek and Persian and Egyptian and everything in between. His mother's Macedonian prejudices are irrelevant. The final letter, the last recorded correspondence between Olympias and Alexander, if it's genuine, is telling. Olympias, come home. You've conquered enough. Let others govern these distant lands. Return to Macedon. Rule properly. Alexander, I will return when I've reached the end of the world. He never returns. He dies in Babylon in June 323 BCE, age 32. Fever, probably malaria, possibly poisoning. Sick for 10 days, then dead. He never sees his mother again after leaving for Asia in 334 BC. 9 years of campaigning. 9 years of letters. But they never meet face to face again. Olympias created a god-king who conquered the known world. But in doing so, she lost her son. The boy who adored her, who trusted her absolutely, became a man who found her inconvenient. Demanding. A reminder of a past he'd outgrown. She won. And in winning, she lost everything that mattered. But Olympias's story isn't over yet, because Alexander's death triggers the bloodiest succession crisis in ancient history. The Wars of the Diadochi, the Wars of the Successors. And Olympias, now in her late 50s, is about to enter her final war. Not with whispers and poison and manipulation, but with actual armies. The snake is about to lead soldiers into battle. And it's going to be catastrophic. June 323 BC. Babylon. Alexander the Great dies at age 32, probably from fever, in a palace far from home. His body isn't even cold before the empire begins to fracture. He leaves no clear heir. His wife Roxana is pregnant, but the child isn't born yet, and even when born, will be an infant. Alexander's half-brother, Philip III Aridaeus, is mentally disabled. There's no adult, capable heir. Which means the empire, the largest ever conquered by one person, stretching from Greece to India, is up for grabs. And Olympias, now approaching 60 years old, decides she's going to fight for her grandson's right to inherit. This is her final act. And it's going to be brutal. The Diadochi. The Diadochi, successors, are Alexander's generals. The men who conquered the world with him. And now they're going to tear that world apart, fighting over who controls it. The main players. Perdiccas, Alexander's second-in-command, holding Alexander's signet ring, symbol of authority. Claims to be regent for Alexander's eventual heirs. Antipater, the general Alexander left in Macedon. Old, experienced, Olympias' enemy, they've been feuding for years over who controls Macedon. Cassander, Antipater's son. Young, ambitious, hates Olympias as much as she hates his father. Ptolemy takes Egypt, founds his own dynasty there. Smart enough to secure his own kingdom rather than fight for the whole empire. Antigonus controls Asia Minor, builds his own power base. And several others, all circling each other like wolves, allying and betraying and maneuvering for advantage. Olympias initially sides with Perdiccas. He's holding Alexander's signet ring. He supports the idea of Alexander's bloodline inheriting. But Perdiccas is murdered in 321 BCE by his own generals. The empire descends into open civil war. The double kingship. A temporary compromise is reached. Philip III Aridaeus, Alexander's mentally disabled half-brother, and Alexander IV, Alexander's posthumous son, born to Roxana shortly after Alexander's death, are declared co-kings. Neither can actually rule. Aridaeus because of his disability. Alexander IV because he's an infant, which means they're pawns. Symbols controlled by whoever holds physical custody of them. Olympias sees her chance. Alexander IV is her grandson. If she can control him, she controls the legitimacy of the empire. She allies with Roxana. They're both invested in Alexander IV's success. But Aridaeus is a problem. Because some generals prefer him, he's an adult male, even if disabled. He can be controlled, made to sign documents, used as a figurehead. And Aridaeus is married to Eurydice, another Eurydice, not Cleopatra Eurydice. This Eurydice is ambitious, capable, running things in Aridaeus's name. Olympias hates her. Sees her as another young woman trying to take what belongs to her bloodline. History is repeating itself. Olympias versus a younger woman, fighting over succession, fighting over legitimacy. The invasion of Macedon. By 317 BC, Macedon is being ruled by Cassander. Antipater died, his son inherited power. Cassander controls Philip III Aridaeus and Eurydice. He's the de facto king, using Aridaeus as a puppet. Olympias is in Epirus, her homeland, with Alexander IV and Roxana. She's technically in exile again. Marginalized. Aging. And she decides, enough. If Cassander wants war, she'll give him war. Olympias raises an army. In Epirus, she still has influence, still has family connections, her nephew rules there. She gathers troops. And in autumn 317 BCE, she invades Macedon. She's approximately 58 years old. Leading an army. Going to war personally. The army crosses from Epirus into Macedon. Cassander's forces, led nominally by Philip III Aridaeus and Eurydice, march to meet her. And then something unexpected happens. Cassander's army defects. Because Olympias is still Alexander's mother, her army is fighting for Alexander's son. The Macedonian soldiers remember Alexander's glory, remember the legend. And they're not going to fight against his mother and his child for some general's son. Philip III Aridaeus and Eurydice are captured without a battle. Olympias has won through pure symbolic power, the power of being Alexander's mother. But what she does next destroys any moral high ground she might have claimed. The murders. Olympias captures Philip III Aridaeus, Alexander's half-brother, the mentally disabled man who'd been king in name. And she has him executed. Not quickly. Not mercifully. According to sources, she had him imprisoned first, humiliated, possibly tortured. Then killed. His crime? Being an obstacle to her grandson's sole claim to the throne. Eurydice, Aridaeus's ambitious wife, receives worse treatment. Olympias forces her to choose her method of death, sword, rope, or poison. Eurydice chooses suicide by hanging rather than give Olympias the satisfaction of execution. This is Olympias's pattern repeating. She's killed another Philip. She's forced another Eurydice to suicide. The snake striking the same targets decades later. But she doesn't stop there. She conducts a massive purge of Cassander's supporters in Macedon. Sources claim she executed about 100 Macedonian nobles, anyone associated with Cassander, anyone who'd supported Aridaeus, anyone she saw as a threat. This is where Olympias crosses a line even by ancient standards. These aren't just political enemies. These are prominent Macedonian families. Old aristocracy. People with relatives, with connections, with the ability to seek revenge. Olympias is creating a blood debt she can't repay. The siege of Pydna. Cassander wasn't in Macedon when Olympias invaded. He was campaigning elsewhere. But when he gets news of what's happened, his puppet king murdered, his supporters executed, his father's old enemy now controlling Macedon, he moves fast. He raises an army, returns to Macedon, and besieges Olympias in Pydna, a coastal city where she's fortified herself with Alexander IV, Roxana, and her remaining supporters. The siege begins in winter 317 to 316 BCE, and it's brutal. Cassander cuts off all supplies. Olympias and everyone in Pydna begin to starve. Months pass. People in the city are eating horses, then dogs, then finally corpses. The desperation is total. Olympias's soldiers start deserting. They slip out of the city at night, surrendering to Cassander, preferring his mercy to slow starvation. Olympias holds out as long as she can. She's not going to surrender. She's Alexander's mother. She's fought her whole life for power. She's not giving it up now. But eventually, in spring 316 BC, she has no choice. The city is starving. Her remaining soldiers are too weak to fight. There's no relief coming. She surrenders. With conditions. She wants a trial. She wants to face her accusers publicly, to defend her actions, to argue her case before the Macedonian assembly. Cassander agrees. Publicly. Privately, he has other plans. The trial that never happens. Cassander knows he can't give Olympias a trial, because if she speaks publicly, she's dangerous. She's Alexander's mother. She's charismatic, intelligent, capable of swaying crowds. She could turn public opinion, could turn soldiers against him. The families of the people she executed want revenge, but Cassander can't be seen as the one ordering her execution. That would be regicide, killing the Queen Mother, mother of Alexander the Great. Politically disastrous. So Cassander does something clever and horrible. He gives her to the families of her victims. Olympias is handed over to the relatives of the 100 Macedonian nobles she had executed. Their choice what to do with her. And they choose stones. Spring, 316 BCE. Pydna. Olympias walks out of the city gates. She's been promised a trial. She's surrendered under terms of negotiation. She's Queen Mother, mother of Alexander the Great, descendant of Achilles. She's also starving, exhausted, defeated. 60 years old, or close to it. The Snake Queen at the end of her strength. And waiting for her is not a trial. Waiting for her is a crowd. The families of the men she executed. The relatives of her victims. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of people who've lost fathers, brothers, sons to her purges. Cassander is there, watching. But he's not giving orders. He's letting the crowd decide. And they decide, death. The traditional punishment. Stoning is an ancient execution method. Communal. Participatory. Everyone shares the guilt, or the justice, depending on how you see it. It's also deeply humiliating. Reserved for the worst criminals, for people who've violated community norms so severely that the community itself must reject them. For a queen to be stoned, for Olympias, who lived in palaces, who commanded armies, who slept with snakes and claimed divine connections, it's the ultimate degradation. And that's the point. The execution. They bring her to an open space. Not a formal execution ground. Just a courtyard or plaza where there's room for the crowd. Olympias stands. Sources don't record whether she's bound or free, whether she's begging or defiant. But knowing her history, her personality, her lifetime of refusing to submit, she probably stands straight. Refuses to kneel. Refuses to give them the satisfaction of seeing her broken. The first stone is thrown. Then another. Then the crowd joins in. Stone after stone. Fist-sized rocks, hurled from close range. They hit her shoulders, her head, her chest. She staggers. Falls. Tries to rise. Can't. The stones keep coming. The crowd is releasing decades of suppressed rage. Rage at her arrogance, her cruelty, her murders. Rage at the way she wielded power that women weren't supposed to have. Rage at the fear she inspired. She falls. Blood spreads across the stones. The crowd continues. Ensuring she's dead. Ensuring there's no possibility of survival. Eventually, the stones stop. The crowd disperses. And Olympias, priestess of Dionysus, queen of Macedon, mother of Alexander the Great, the woman who slept with snakes and created a god, lies dead in the dust. The dishonor. In Greek culture, proper burial is essential. Without it, the soul cannot rest. To be denied burial is the ultimate insult, the final punishment. Olympias's body is initially left unburied. Cassander won't allow it. It's left exposed, subject to dogs and carrion birds. But eventually, sources disagree on how long. Someone buries her. Maybe Cassander decides it's politically necessary to show respect to Alexander's mother. Maybe someone from her family claims the body. Maybe public opinion forces proper treatment. She's buried quietly. No ceremony. No monument. No tomb like the one she helped build for Alexander. Just a grave, unmarked or minimally marked, somewhere in Macedon. The location is lost. We don't know where Olympias is buried. The woman who dominated Macedonian politics for decades left no physical trace. Except the stories. The horrifying, fascinating, impossible-to-forget stories. The fate of her legacy. But Olympias's death doesn't save Alexander IV. Cassander keeps the boy and Roxana under guard, nominally honoring them as royalty but actually holding them prisoner. Around 310 BC, about 6 years after Olympias's death, Cassander has Alexander IV and Roxana murdered. Quietly. No public announcement. They just disappear. Alexander's bloodline ends. The dynasty Olympias fought so hard to preserve is exterminated. Everything she did, all the murders, all the manipulation, all the programming of Alexander into a god-king, leads to this: the complete elimination of Alexander's descendants. Cassander founds his own dynasty in Macedon. The Diadochi carve up Alexander's empire into separate kingdoms. The unified empire Alexander conquered dies with him. Olympias's entire life project, securing her son's legacy, ensuring her grandson inherits, fails completely. The ancient judgment. Ancient sources are nearly unanimous in their condemnation of Olympias. She's presented as jealous and vindictive, Plutarch; savage and bloodthirsty, Justin; a practitioner of witchcraft, various sources; responsible for corrupting Alexander; multiple sources blame her for his megalomaniacal tendencies. But notice something: she's rarely criticized for the same things male rulers are criticized for. Male rulers kill rivals, conduct purges, execute enemies. This is considered normal, even admirable if done successfully. Olympias is condemned for the same actions. Because she's a woman. Because she used religious authority instead of military authority. Because she was foreign. Because she didn't stay in her prescribed role. The sexual and religious elements of her story, the snakes, the Dionysian mysteries, are emphasized by ancient, male historians precisely because they make her seem unnatural, transgressive. A woman who uses normal political violence is disturbing. A woman who uses religious violence while sleeping with snakes is monstrous. The modern interpretation. 2,000 years later, how do we judge Olympias? She was undeniably cruel. The murder of Cleopatra Eurydice and her infant is horrific by any standard. The executions of dozens of Macedonian nobles was excessive even by ancient norms. The manipulation of Alexander was pathological. But she was also operating in a system that gave women almost no power except through their sons and husbands. She used the tools available to her: religion, sexual mystery, maternal influence, strategic violence. And she was extraordinarily effective until she overreached. She created Alexander the Great. Not alone, he had his own genius, but she shaped the psychological framework that made him believe he could conquer the world. And he did. The cost was enormous. Her own death. The extinction of Alexander's bloodline. Hundreds of deaths in purges and civil wars. Was it worth it? That's not a question history can answer. The serpent's truth. Olympias lived her entire life as a snake, coiled, waiting, striking when threatened. She used fear as power. She refused to be dismissed, ignored, replaced. In a world that wanted women to be passive, decorative, obedient, she was active, dangerous, commanding. And the world killed her for it. Killed her in the most humiliating way possible, with stones thrown by a mob. But 2,000 years later, we remember her. We tell her story. We argue about whether she was villain or victim, monster or survivor. We don't remember most of Philip's other wives. We don't remember most Macedonian queens. They were properly feminine, properly submissive, and they disappeared into historical silence. Olympias refused to disappear. She made herself unforgettable through her transgressions. The snakes remembered. And so do we. Epilogue. The serpent's legacy. Modern day. A museum of ancient history. Tourists wander through galleries displaying artifacts from Alexander's empire. Coins with his face, maps of his conquests, reconstructions of his armor. In one display case, a small statue of a woman holding a snake. The placard reads, "Priestess of Dionysus, 4th century BC. Possibly representative of Olympias of Epirus, mother of Alexander the Great." Most visitors glance at it and move on. Alexander is the star, the conqueror, the legend. His mother is a footnote, possibly a representative.